There is a lot to be discussed. The question is whether this is a tactical tour aimed at sending a message to Trump at a time when the US president has the knives out for both Delhi and Beijing. Of course, many will say that trust is not the only element in deficit between India and China. There are other things also in deficit. Let's open this up. Sushant Sareen, Senior Fellow of the ORF, is here. Professor Victor Gao, Vice President, Center for China and Globalization, Chair Professor, Soochow University, is also here with us. Let me first begin with you, Professor Gao. The conversation has begun. It's a good thing that the two countries are talking, but can we expect China to go out there and assure India, for example, that it will, at some level or the other, be able to prevail upon its great ally Pakistan, its big brother Pakistan, to be a stabilizer rather than a disruptor in the region? Because that really is the test of good intent, isn't it, Professor Gao?
Thank you very much for having me. I think it's a very positive step that Foreign Minister Wang Yi is in India for very important resumption of talks between China and India. I've called China and India both two super populations in the world, and we have tremendous amount of responsibility for the Chinese people on the one hand and for the Indian people on the other hand, and for mankind as a whole. Therefore, I strongly encourage that China and India to resolve whatever problems there are between them in peace and in negotiation, and focus on development and uplifting the people from poverty, for example, and promoting mutual benefit. Now, China also has consistently supported developing peace and stability and development on the Indian subcontinent as a whole, and try to urge all countries to refrain from dangerous acts of aggression against each other. That is a consistent position on the Chinese side, and we will continue to do so in the future.
No, but Professor, can I ask you my follow-up question? It's an important question before I bring in Sushant Sareen to give us his view on this. Isn't the onus right now on China to earn India's trust? It has constantly desecrated or attempt to desecrate India's borders. It holds Indian territory. It builds infrastructure in Indian territory, as you know, which is at the moment disputed through a very important neck of the woods, so to speak, up in the north, Aksai Chin. You also have arms trades with Pakistan, and we have also been told that during Operation Sindoor you provided live intelligence to Pakistan. These are all acts which are not done in good faith. I'm sure you'll agree with me, Professor.
First of all, I hope China and India can really reach a high level of trust. On the other hand, please allow me to emphasize that the China-Indian border should be mutually acceptable. China will never accept the McMahon line in the eastern section of the border, drawn up by a British, and that line is highly artificial. It should never be treated by India as the border between China and India. China will never, allow me to emphasize, never accept the McMahon line as the final border between China and India. Therefore, it is only right thing for China and India to engage with each other in peaceful negotiations about how to end this territorial dispute in good faith, rather than allowing this territorial dispute to drag on forever, because it's not the right thing for China or India to do, and China will never allow India to use the McMahon line as the final border between China and India. It is the right time. It is high time for China and India to engage with each other, to put the territorial dispute behind us, to allow the two only super populations in the world to respectfully engage with each other on equal terms, so that both the Chinese people and the Indian people can benefit from our own development for the benefit of our own two countries.
Okay, Sushant Sareen, there was another word that was used by the EM today. One word was candid, the other one was constructive. So let me ask you, has the Chinese approach to tackling this boundary issue been constructive? Let's just ask an open question.
Rahul, a couple of things. I think one, you have to recognize that, and I think it's important for me to underline this fact, that, a lot of people are jumping to the conclusion that India and China are now starting to talk because of, the problems we are having with the United States. But the fact of the matter remains, much before any problems started with the United States, India and China had started in a slow and measured manner to start re-engaging each other and start rebuilding some amount of confidence. So, for people who think that this is suddenly some kind of a knee-jerk reaction which is taking place, it is not that. It is that probably there is a greater degree of urgency to try and sort out some of the more troubling problems between us at this point in time, and we can thank Donald Trump for that. But that process had started much earlier. Secondly, I look, my own sense is that both India and China have missed opportunities in the past to settle the border question. There have been times when the Chinese have made certain proposals to us, and there were people from India who did not want to accept those proposals. There have been other times when we have made certain proposals and the Chinese have not accepted those proposals. And I think there's been a miscalculation on both sides. Perhaps another time has come where, as the professor is saying, maybe in a more constructive approach, neither the Chinese are going to get their maximalist demands, nor I would imagine the Indians are going to get the maximalist demand. So we have to try and figure out what kind of an arrangement we can reach. Perhaps give it time, but until then, try and manage the border so that tranquility is maintained, which I have to add was disturbed because of certain actions that the Chinese took in 2020. And that clash should have never happened. That was a violation of all the other agreements that we had entered into with the Chinese on the border issue. That had been violated. So that tension had been kind of mounting for some years, and it finally erupted. Since then, things have calmed down. But I think it is important to try and rebuild some of the confidence. And while that process is getting underway, perhaps also engage with each other on some of the other issues, which are of a nature that, for example, trade, economic cooperation, maybe on connectivity issues, we can talk to each other on a range of other issues. My own personal belief, Rahul, is that the Chinese in the past, I wouldn't say that the current Chinese leadership is doing it, but in the past, Chinese leadership has counseled the Pakistanis to back down from the high horse that they have climbed against India. The Pakistanis ignored the Chinese advice. The Chinese have continued to indulge the Pakistanis. They have their own relationship. I don't think we should make a big deal out of that particular relationship, even though it impacts us adversely. And we have to be prepared for a possible fallout of that particular relationship. But I would also go to the extent of saying that while we say that the Chinese have, and probably there is truth behind those charges, that the Chinese were giving them real-time data, at the political level, at least the statements which came out of China were not hostile or directed against India. They adopted a pretty middle-of-the-road approach. So I think there is an opportunity right now. Whether both countries can grab it or not is anybody's guess.
Okay, very quickly, Professor Gao, what are you looking for from this particular engagement? What do you think? In 1 minute, please, can you sum it up?
Yes, achieving normalcy of relations between China and India, and to re-engage with each other to talk about all the disputes between China and India, including very importantly territorial disputes which need to be settled as quickly as possible, to allow both China and India to fully engage with each other for mutual benefit, because these two superpopulations in the world can really generate a miracle at a time when both of us need to defend free trade for our own benefit and for the benefit of mankind.
Well, viewers, here's an opportunity. The 24th dialogue will begin. 24 rounds have already taken place, so it is proving to be intractable. Can we make progress? Can over the next couple of years we come to some sort of a breakthrough? That's the abiding hope, perhaps because we don't have ideological differences, some would say, with China. We don't have that intractable situation that prevents us from reaching an agreement. Thanks for watching The Hard Facts.